You have reached the voicemail box. You have reached the voicemail box.
Wood is a stability overactor. Am I sure? Well, that's why I like to work with paper and cardboard. They're much more of a stable actor. You could tell wood really fancies itself. But cardboard and paper are, much more of a humble plied parable. Like, look at this parable right here. This parable can only do damage. Stability should look like this. Okay, I have been commissioned to platter people's bad daydreams. The bad daydreams instant bloated me, and they have recited into my So tonight we need to reassure these bad tree dreams that it's going to be alright. And by doing that, we will teach them how to be unlike wood. The 10 degrees of hardness. Okay, that's very fitting. So at first gist glance, which is the only glance that matters, I see top 10. Now this is the healing process. And you start, every process should be started with a gist. The healing process, the grieving process, the top 10 process, the thinking process, the sleeping process, the dying process. So, all of those processes should be started with a gist. And right now we're going to cover all those bases with a mature degree of hot air. So right away, the first thing that made me gist was this big, lickable hot air balloon. And why isn't a hot air balloon a food? It's basically anger and a bag of chips combined. And with that, we move closer to the fully actualized gist. Because if we don't make these gists, people's would not be abbreviated, checked. Put in abbreviation check. And we must do that because people, they get too explanatory. This is an ambitious gist, which doesn't mean that it's not a gist. It's borderline full-footed explained. But borderline like a neon scope. So number 1 in degrees of hardness is obviously a hot air balloon. That is number 1. Number 2, of course, has to be first. When you say first, it is one of the hardest words, but it can't be hot air balloon. Of course not. Because when the person who's operating the hot air balloon, they're going to say, "Who's coming on first?" What was that? That's hard. And encapsulated. And what we're doing here is really depressurizing the farcity of being judged. So everybody has in their head several comprehensively dubious lists of judgment. That is natural. But right here we are depressurizing compressurizing that and coming to terms with the fact that hot air balloons are the highest degree of hardness. And a food. Well, you'd think, well, speaking of food and being really hard, that's a rock in a hard place. But tell that to the people who eat rocks to survive. They are the hard place. Number 3 would be, of course, Russia. Russia is number 3 in hardness. Number 4 is name. Because you can't be that hard without a name. And you know what's really hard? What's really hard is real people. They are really hard. But before that, before we get to real people, number 9, of course, is 1879. Now that was hard. Oh, that was hard. 1879 was one of the hardest artichokes to ever grow. Number 8, comparing is hard. Number 7 has to be the thumbtack. When you sit on one of those, you want to put it at number 1. But most of the time you don't sit on them, so they're number 7. And number 6 has got to be the castle. Because without those, we wouldn't even be able to lay bricks. Now you may be thinking, this is a little much for a gist. No, it is just an ambitious gist. And we like those. The more ambitious the gist, the better. Because people need to understand. People need to come to terms with their traumas of being judged and being put down. Well, now we're putting down our own true gist. And no one can stop us. Because we're hard. Well, at least we know what hardness is. Who is the oh boy? I would like to meet him. There you have it. A whole new top 10 list of healing from judgment. Top 10 degrees of hardness. 1, hot air balloon. 2, the word first. 3, Russia. 4, 1879. 6, castle. 7, thumbtack. 8, comparing. And 10, real people. And that's really all you need to know about hard. It's more of an info dump octopus, which will go straight to gist court. In case anybody else is bullied by being put on a list hyperbolically. This is the shirt off my shirt. People work hard, and they say, well, what am I working for? And this here, which comes with their clothing, is supposed to tell you what you're working for. We're going to make that happen right now. Let's get rid of the fog of confusion. Let people know what they're really working for. Because the manufacturers, they do these like fortune cookies. You know, this is what you're working for. This is what you're working for. One size fits all. But this isn't going to be my talking back silk With doing the right amount of gisting, you can take your destiny in your hands. Just like that. This is what we're working for. Everybody, pretty much. Because we need to stay warm. We are all working for 95%. The harder it is to see, the more in need of a gist there will be. Supply and demand. 95%. Temperature. And 40%. %? What? 40% what? %95 temperature and 40% jargon. That's what we're working for. The jargon doesn't need an accurate percent because it's jargon, right? So that is what we're working towards. And that is why this is going into the gist fan, where you turn on your fan, and usually dust, comes off the fan when you turn it on. Well, this is going to come off as a reminder of how hard to work and what we're working towards. Now, to cure bad dreams, you need to know the mapping of your mind. You need to use the gray U. And when you're using the gray U, you can become picture perfect free. But you need to use the gray U, not the blue U or the green U. If you use the gray U, then you will internally map your mind. And become picture perfect free. This is going to go straight in one ear and out your dreams. The gray tidings. Have become blowingly emancipated